For centuries, the great alien empires had ignored Earth. It was not a deliberate insult. It was simply not worth their attention. The Voth had better physics. Their scientists had mapped the fabric of space-time. They had unlocked the secrets of quantum gravity. They had built machines that could bend light. Earth's physics was simple, old, laughable. The Voth read human papers and shook their heads. Children's work. Amateur. Not worth their time. The KRYLL had better engineering. Their engineers had built ships that could cross the galaxy in days. They had created weapons that could destroy planets. They had designed structures that could survive the death of stars. Earth's engineering was primitive, crude, embarrassing. The KRYLL looked at human machines and laughed. Toys. Useless. Not worth their attention. The Xylos had better biology. Their biologists had mapped every gene in the galaxy. They had cured every disease. They had extended life to thousands of years. Earth's biology was basic, incomplete, ignorant. The Xylos read human medical papers and sighed. Children playing with tools they did not understand. Not worth their time. No alien scientist wanted to visit Earth. No alien scholar wanted to study humans. Earth was a backwater, a dead end, a forgotten planet. The empires had better things to do, better worlds to explore, better species to study. Earth was nothing. Humans were nothing. Then something changed. It started slowly. A human physicist published a paper on quantum entanglement. The Voth read it. They were not impressed. The paper was simple, obvious, but something about it was different. A new way of thinking. A fresh perspective. The Voth dismissed it. They went back to their own work. A human engineer built a new type of engine. The KRYLL examined it. They were not impressed. The engine was weak, slow, inefficient, but something about it was clever. A new way of solving an old problem. The KRYLL dismissed it. They went back to their own work. A human biologist discovered a new way to fight disease. The Xylos studied it. They were not impressed. The method was crude, risky, unproven, but something about it was effective. A new way of using the body's own defenses. The Xylos dismissed it. They went back to their own work. But the papers kept coming. The discoveries kept happening. The inventions kept appearing. Human science was advancing, faster than any species in galactic history. The empires noticed. They were confused. How is this possible? Asked the Voth leader. Humans are primitive. Their technology is simple. Their science is laughable. How can they be advancing so fast? The KRYLL leader shrugged. Perhaps they found something. A hidden library. A forgotten technology. A stolen discovery. The Xylos leader nodded. That must be it. They cannot have done this on their own. They must have had help. The empires sent spies to Earth. They searched for hidden libraries, forgotten technologies, stolen discoveries. They found nothing. Earth had no ancient secrets, no alien technology, no stolen knowledge. The humans had done it on their own, with their own minds, their own hands, their own curiosity. The empires were stunned. They had ignored Earth for centuries. They had dismissed humans as primitive, weak, unimportant. They had been wrong. The humans were not primitive. They were not weak. They were not unimportant. They were something else. Something new. Something the empires had never seen. The Voth sent a team of scientists to Earth. They wanted to study human methods, to understand how humans were advancing so fast. The team spent a year on Earth. They visited universities. They attended lectures. They read papers. They were confused. Humans do not do science the way we do, the lead Voth scientist reported. They do not specialize. They do not focus. They do not follow rules. They jump between fields. They combine ideas. They ask questions that make no sense. They try things that should not work. And somehow, they discover things we have missed. The KRYLL sent a team of engineers to Earth. They wanted to study human engineering, to understand how humans were building new things. The team spent a year on Earth. They visited factories. They watched human builders. They examined human machines. They were confused. Humans do not engineer the way we do, the lead KRYLL engineer reported. They do not plan. They do not optimize. They do not follow blueprints. They experiment. They fail. They try again. They build things that should not work. And somehow, they work. The Xylos sent a team of biologists to Earth. They wanted to study human biology, to understand how humans were curing diseases. The team spent a year on Earth. They visited hospitals. They watched human doctors. They studied human treatments. They were confused. Humans do not practice medicine the way we do, the lead Xylos biologist reported. They do not follow protocols. They do not rely on established knowledge. They try new things. They take risks. They learn from mistakes. And somehow, they heal people we could not. The empires were silent. They did not know what to make of these reports. The humans were not following the rules. They were not using established methods. They were not doing science the way it was supposed to be done. And yet, they were advancing, faster than any species in galactic history. The Voth leader spoke. We have ignored Earth for centuries. We have dismissed humans as primitive. We have been wrong. They are not primitive. They are different. They do science differently. And their way is working. The KRYLL leader nodded. We must study them. Not their discoveries. Their methods. Their mindset. There is something we can learn from them. The Xylos leader agreed. Send more scientists. More engineers. More biologists. Study everything. Learn everything. The humans have something we do not. We must find out what it is. Earth was no longer forgotten. It was the center of attention. The empires sent their best minds to study human science. They watched. They learned. They were confused. The humans did not follow rules. They broke them. They did not accept limits. They exceeded them. They did not fear failure. They embraced it. The empires did not understand. But they wanted to. They had ignored Earth for centuries. Now they could not look away. The forgotten planet had become the center of galactic science. And no one knew why. But they were determined to find out. The alien scientists came to Earth in waves. They came from the Voth empires, with their logic and their calculations. They came from the KRYLL empires, with their strength and their engineering. They came from the Xylos empires, with their knowledge and their wisdom. They came to study the mystery. How had a primitive species advanced so fast? How had a forgotten planet become the center of galactic science? They expected to find a secret weapon, a hidden technology, a stolen discovery. They searched human labs. They examined human equipment. They read human papers. They found nothing. No secret weapon. No hidden technology. No stolen discovery. The humans had done it on their own. With their own minds. Their own hands. Their own curiosity. The alien scientists were confused. They had studied many species. They had seen many ways of doing science. They had never seen anything like this. Humans did not do science the way other species did. Other species specialized. They focused on one field. Mastered it. Perfected it. They became experts in physics or biology or engineering. They stayed in their lanes. They did not cross boundaries. They did not mix fields. Humans did the opposite. They connected fields. Physics with biology. Chemistry with art. Engineering with music. They saw connections that other species missed. They asked questions that other species never thought to ask. A Voth scientist named the Wren attended a human conference. He expected to hear papers on physics. He heard papers on physics. But he also heard papers on biology. And chemistry. And art. And music. The humans were mixing fields. They were combining ideas. They were creating new disciplines that had never existed before. The Wren was confused. Why are you mixing physics with biology? He asked a human scientist. The human scientist smiled. Because they are connected. The same laws that govern particles govern life. The same principles that explain stars explain cells. We cannot understand one without understanding the other. The Wren had never thought of that. He had studied physics his whole life. He had never studied biology. He had never seen the connection. The humans had. They saw connections everywhere. They saw patterns that other species missed. They asked questions that other species never thought to ask. A KRYLL engineer named Vex visited a human university. He expected to see engineering labs. He saw engineering labs. But he also saw music rooms. And art studios. And dance floors. The humans were mixing engineering with art. They were building machines that were beautiful. They were creating structures that were musical. They were designing engines that danced. Vex was confused. Why are you mixing engineering with art? He asked a human engineer. The human engineer smiled. Because they are connected. Beauty and function are not opposites. They are partners. A machine that is beautiful works better. A structure that is musical stands longer. An engine that dances runs smoother. Vex had never thought of that. He had studied engineering his whole life. He had never studied art. He had never seen the connection. The humans had. They saw connections everywhere. They saw patterns that other species missed. They asked questions that other species never thought to ask. A Xylo scholar named Seri visited a human hospital. She expected to see doctors. She saw doctors. But she also saw artists. And musicians. And dancers. The humans were mixing medicine with art. They were using music to heal. They were using dance to treat. They were using painting to cure. Seri was confused. "Why are you mixing medicine with art?" she asked a human doctor. The human doctor smiled. "Because they are connected. The body responds to beauty. The mind heals with music. The spirit recovers through dance. We cannot treat the body without treating the mind. We cannot heal the mind without healing the spirit." Seri had never thought of that. She had studied medicine her whole life. She had never studied art. She had never seen the connection. The humans had. They saw connections everywhere. They saw patterns that other species missed. They asked questions that other species never thought to ask. The alien scientists were stunned. They had come to Earth looking for a secret weapon. They had found something unexpected. The human difference was not in their tools. It was in their minds. They saw connections. They asked questions. They mixed fields. They broke boundaries. The Voth scientist spoke. "We have been doing science wrong. We have been specializing, focusing, narrowing. We have been missing the connections. The humans have been seeing them. That is why they are advancing so fast." The KRYLL engineer nodded. "We have been building machines that are efficient but ugly. The humans build machines that are beautiful and efficient. They have found a connection we missed." The Xylo scholar agreed. "We have been treating diseases with medicine alone. The humans treat the whole person. Body, mind, and spirit. They have found a connection we missed." The alien scientists returned to their empires. They brought news of the human difference. The empires were skeptical. They had been doing science the same way for millennia. They did not want to change. But the evidence was clear. The humans were advancing faster. They were discovering more. They were solving problems that the empires could not. The empires decided to try the human method. They encouraged their scientists to mix fields, to ask new questions, to see connections. It was hard. Their scientists had been trained to specialize, to focus, to stay in their lanes. But they tried. They failed. They tried again. Slowly, they began to see. The connections had always been there. They had just been blind to them. The humans had shown them the way. Not with weapons. Not with technology. With a way of thinking. A way of seeing. A way of asking. The human difference was not in their tools. It was in their minds. They saw connections. They asked questions. They mixed fields. They broke boundaries. And that, the empires realized, was the secret. Not intelligence. Not knowledge. Not technology. Curiosity. The courage to ask what if. The wisdom to see connections. The humility to learn from others. That was the human difference. And the galaxy would never be the same. The alien scientists were stunned. They had studied hundreds of civilizations and catalogued countless methods of discovery. Some species pursued knowledge through rigid logic. Others through endless experimentation. Some relied on artificial minds, while others trusted inherited wisdom. But nothing had prepared them for the human approach to science. Human science was not greater because it went deeper. It was greater because it reached wider. Most civilizations specialized until their experts knew everything about almost nothing. Humans did the opposite. They explored many fields at once, then linked them together in ways others never considered. A human physicist could sit beside a human biologist and speak for hours. Their textbooks were different. Their tools were different. Their training was different. Yet they found common ground. The physicist explained energy and structure. The biologist explained growth and adaptation. Together they discovered how the behavior of tiny particles shaped living cells. They published breakthroughs neither could have achieved alone. The Voth scientists watched in confusion. In their empire, physicists spoke only with physicists. Biologists spoke only with biologists. Crossing disciplines was considered inefficient, even improper. Knowledge was organized into perfect compartments. Humans kept breaking the compartments. A human engineer could work with a human artist. To the aliens, this made no sense. One built machines. The other made beauty. Their goals should have conflicted. Instead, they strengthened each other. Artists taught engineers about form, balance, color, and how people felt when using an object. Engineers taught artists about materials, systems, and precision. Together they built machines that were not only efficient, but elegant and intuitive. Devices became easier to use because they were beautiful. The KRYLL engineers were baffled. In their empire, art did not exist. Beauty had no tactical value. Design meant function and nothing more. Yet human tools spread across worlds because people wanted to use them. The humans had discovered something the KRYLL never had. People matter as much as performance. Then the Xylos witnessed something stranger still. A human doctor collaborated with a musician. The doctor treated pain, stress, and injury. The musician understood rhythm, tone, emotion, and memory. Together they developed therapies where music reduced anxiety, improved recovery, restored speech, and helped minds heal after trauma. What the Xylos had labeled entertainment became medicine. Their scholars were shaken. For ages they had treated bodies as systems and symptoms as equations. Humans treated the whole person, body, mind, and emotion together. Again, a wall had fallen. Across the galaxy, the observers reached the same conclusion. Other species built silos. Humans built bridges. A Voth researcher addressed his council. We dug deeper into narrower fields until we lost sight of everything around us. Humans see patterns across disciplines. That is why they move faster. A KRYLL engineer admitted what would once have been unthinkable. We perfected machines and forgot the beings who use them. Humans combine utility with imagination. We have been building with half a mind. A Xylos physician bowed her head. We treated illness while ignoring meaning, emotion, and experience. Humans heal more than flesh. Reluctantly, the empires decided to experiment with the human method. They encouraged collaboration. At first, it was disastrous. Specialists mistrusted outsiders. Terminology clashed. Pride got in the way. Old traditions resisted change. Many projects failed before they began. But humans had exported one more lesson without trying. Failure is part of learning. So the empires tried again. A Voth physicist and biologist co-authored the first interdisciplinary paper in their history, revealing a principle shared by stars and cells. Complex systems survive through balance, not control. A KRYLL design bureau recruited the first official artist their civilization had ever recognized. She redesigned military interfaces so clearly that error rates dropped overnight. A Xylos hospital hired a singer to work beside surgeons. Patients recovered faster when fear no longer ruled the room. None of it matched humanity's best work. But it was a start. Slowly, ancient cultures changed. Walls became doors. Departments became networks. Experts became teammates. And on Earth, no one realized they were leading a galactic revolution. Scientists still argued over coffee. Engineers still sketched ideas on napkins. Artists still wandered into laboratories asking strange questions. Doctors still borrowed ideas from psychology, athletics, and music. Students still changed majors 3 times before inventing something new. They were simply being human. Eventually, alien delegations returned to Earth to understand the source of it all. They attended conferences where roboticists debated philosophers, ecologists worked with economists, and neuroscientists shared panels with composers. They visited labs where chemists spoke with chefs, programmers with linguists, and astronauts with farmers. Everywhere they saw the same pattern. Humans did not ask, "Whose field is this?" They asked, "Who else should be in the room?" One alien asked a human physicist, "How do you know so much biology?" The physicist laughed. "I don't. My friend does. We talk." Another asked an engineer, "How do your machines feel so natural?" The engineer smiled. "Because an artist helped build them." A third asked a doctor, "How does music heal?" The doctor answered simply, "Because people are more than symptoms." At last, the galaxy understood the human advantage. It was not superior intelligence. It was not unlimited resources. It was not better technology. It was connection. The willingness to share ideas across boundaries. The humility to need other minds. The courage to combine things that do not seem to belong together. Where others saw categories, humans saw possibilities. Where others built walls, humans built networks. And that network changed everything. Earth became the center of galactic science not because humans knew the most, but because they connected knowledge better than anyone else. The aliens recorded the lesson in their archives. Intelligence creates progress. Connection multiplies it. That, they realized, was the true human superpower. The alien scientists began to copy the human method. They started collaborating across fields. They broke down their silos. They shared ideas. Their science advanced faster than ever before. The Voth learned from human physics. They applied human principles to their own research. They made discoveries that had eluded them for centuries. The KRYLL learned from human engineering. They adopted human designs. They built machines that were more efficient than anything they had made before. The Xylos learned from human biology. They used human techniques. They cured diseases that had plagued their people for millennia. The empires were pleased. Their science was advancing. Their technology was improving. Their societies were benefiting. But something was missing. They could not replicate the human magic. Their science was better, but it was not as good as human science. Their discoveries were important, but they were not as groundbreaking. Their advances were significant, but they were not as rapid. The Voth scientist spoke. We are doing everything the humans do. We are collaborating. We are sharing. We are breaking down silos. But we are not achieving the same results. Why? The KRYLL engineer nodded. We are using human methods. We are learning from human designs. But our machines are still not as good as theirs. Why? The Xylos doctor agreed. We are applying human techniques. We are using human knowledge. But our cures are still not as effective. Why? The empires sent more scientists to Earth. They wanted to understand what they were missing. They studied human culture, human history, human psychology. They looked for the secret ingredient, the thing that made human science special, the thing that they could not copy. They found it. The humans had something the aliens did not. They had a culture of curiosity, a tradition of questioning, a willingness to fail. Human children were taught to ask questions, to challenge authority, to explore the unknown. Alien children were taught to obey, to follow rules, to stay within boundaries. Human scientists were encouraged to take risks, to try new things, to fail and try again. Alien scientists were punished for failure, discouraged from risk, expected to be right the first time. The Voth scientist was shocked. You allow your scientists to fail? He asked a human researcher. The human smiled. We do not just allow it. We encourage it. Failure is not the end. It is a step, a lesson, a chance to learn. Every failure teaches us something. Every mistake brings us closer to the truth. The Voth scientist had never thought of that. In his empire, failure was shameful. Mistakes were hidden. Scientists who failed were punished. They lost funding, lost status, lost respect. The humans did the opposite. They celebrated failure. They learned from mistakes. They grew stronger from defeat. The KRYLL engineer was shocked. You allow your children to ask questions? He asked a human teacher. The human teacher smiled. We do not just allow it. We encourage it. Questions are the engine of science. Every discovery begins with a question. Every invention starts with a why. We teach our children to ask, to wonder, to imagine. The KRYLL engineer had never thought of that. In his empire, children were taught to obey, to follow orders, to not question authority. Questions were seen as disrespectful. Curiosity was seen as dangerous. The humans did the opposite. They celebrated questions. They encouraged curiosity. They taught their children to wonder. The Xylos doctor was shocked. You allow your scientists to take risks? She asked a human lab director. The human lab director smiled. We do not just allow it. We reward it. The biggest discoveries come from the biggest risks. The greatest advances come from the greatest leaps. We give our scientists the freedom to explore, to experiment, to try the impossible. The Xylos doctor had never thought of that. In her empire, scientists followed protocols. They stayed within established boundaries. They did not take risks. Risk was seen as irresponsible. Experimentation was seen as wasteful. The humans did the opposite. They celebrated risk. They rewarded experimentation. They encouraged their scientists to try the impossible. The alien scientists returned to their empires. They brought news of the human mindset. The empires were skeptical. They had been doing science the same way for millennia. They did not want to change. But the evidence was clear. The human method worked. The human mindset was the secret. The Voth leader spoke. We cannot copy the human mindset. It is not something you can learn from a book. It is not something you can teach in a class. It is part of their culture, their history, their identity. They have been asking questions for thousands of years. They have been failing and learning for just as long. We cannot replicate that overnight. The KRYLL leader nodded. We can try. We can encourage our scientists to take risks, to ask questions, to learn from failure. But it will take time. Generations, perhaps. We cannot change our culture in a year. But we can start. The Xylo's leader agreed. We will begin. We will teach our children to ask questions. We will reward our scientists for taking risks. We will celebrate failure as a learning opportunity. It will be hard. It will be uncomfortable. But it is necessary. The humans have shown us a better way. The empires began to change. Slowly. Painfully. But they began. They encouraged their children to ask questions. They rewarded their scientists for taking risks. They celebrated failure as a learning opportunity. It was hard. It was uncomfortable. But it was working. Their science advanced faster than ever before. Their discoveries grew more important. Their technology grew more powerful. But they never caught up to the humans. The humans had a head start of thousands of years. They had been asking questions, learning from failure. They had a culture of curiosity, a tradition of questioning, a willingness to fail. The aliens could copy the methods. They could not copy the mindset, but they could try. And trying, the humans had taught them, was the most important part. Not success, not victory, not perfection. Trying, failing, learning, trying again. That was the human way. And the galaxy would never be the same. Because now the aliens were trying too. And that, the humans knew, was the first step to greatness. The first step to discovery. The first step to becoming human. The Galactic Council was silent. They had gathered from across the galaxy. The Voth, the KRYLL, the Xylos, the Xanan, all of them. They had come to hear the human secret. Why did Earth lead galactic science? How had a primitive species surpassed them all? Dr. Maya Chen stood before the council. She was small. Her hair was messy. Her lab coat was stained. She looked like a scientist. Not a warrior. Not a general. Not a hero. But she had done what no other species had done. She had led her people to the forefront of galactic science. You want to know why Earth leads galactic science? Maya asked. Her voice was calm. Her eyes were steady. The council leaned forward. They had been waiting for this answer for years. They had studied human methods, copied human techniques, adopted human mindsets. But they could not replicate the human magic. Something was missing. Something only the humans could explain. Maya smiled. It is not because we are smarter. It is not because we work harder. It is not because we have better technology. It is because we are not afraid to be wrong. The council was confused. They had never thought of science as courage. They had thought of it as knowledge, as logic, as certainty. They had thought that being right was the goal, that mistakes were failures, that wrong answers were shameful. Maya continued. Other species fear failure. They fear mistakes. They fear looking foolish. Humans do not. We try things that might not work. We ask questions that might not have answers. We explore paths that might lead nowhere. That is our secret. Not intelligence. Courage. The courage to be wrong. The Voth leader spoke. His voice was quiet. But being wrong is failure. Failure is shameful. How can you build science on shame? Maya shook her head. Being wrong is not failure. It is learning. Every wrong answer teaches us something. Every mistake brings us closer to the truth. We do not hide our failures. We share them. We learn from them. We grow from them. That is how we advance so fast. The KRYLL leader spoke. His voice was hard. But we have tried to copy your methods. We have encouraged our scientists to take risks, to ask questions, to learn from failure. It has helped. But we are still not as good as you. Why? Maya looked at him. Her eyes were kind. Because you are still afraid. You encourage risk, but you punish failure. You ask for questions, but you demand answers. You want to learn from mistakes, but you hide them from others. You have copied our methods. You have not copied our mindset. You are still afraid to be wrong. The council was silent. They knew she was right. They had tried to change. But change was hard. Fear was deep. They had been afraid for millennia. They did not know how to stop. The Xylos leader spoke. Her voice was soft. How did you learn to not be afraid? How did you overcome the fear of failure? Maya thought for a moment. We did not overcome it. We still feel it. Every scientist feels it. The fear of being wrong. The fear of looking foolish. The fear of wasting time. But we do not let it stop us. We feel the fear, and we do it anyway. That is courage. Not the absence of fear. The willingness to act despite fear. The council was silent. They had never thought of courage that way. They had thought courage was for warriors, for soldiers, for heroes. They had not thought it was for scientists, for thinkers, for questioners. Maya looked around the chamber. Science is not about being right. It is about asking questions. It is about exploring the unknown. It is about stepping into the dark and trusting that you will find a way. That takes courage. More courage than fighting a war. More courage than conquering a world. More courage than ruling an empire. She stepped back. That is our secret. That is why Earth leads galactic science. Not because we are smarter. Not because we work harder. Not because we have better technology. Because we have courage. The courage to be wrong. The courage to ask questions. The courage to explore the unknown. That is the human difference. That is the human gift. That is the human way. The council was silent. They did not know what to say. They had come for a secret. They had found one. But it was not what they expected. It was not a formula. Not a technique. Not a technology. It was a mindset. A way of being. A way of thinking. A way of living. The Voth leader spoke. His voice was quiet. Can we learn this? Can we develop this courage? Maya nodded. Yes. But it will take time. It will take practice. It will take failure. You will make mistakes. You will look foolish. You will be wrong. That is okay. That is how you learn. That is how you grow. That is how you become brave. The council thanked her. They returned to their empires. They began the long work of changing their cultures, of teaching their children to ask questions, of rewarding their scientists for taking risks, of celebrating failure as a learning opportunity. It was hard. It was uncomfortable. It was slow. But they tried. And trying, the humans had taught them, was the most important part. The story ends with alien scientists returning to Earth to learn. They came to study human courage, to understand human curiosity, to experience the human way of asking questions. Earth had become the center of galactic science, not because of technology, because of curiosity, because of courage, because of humanity. Dr. Maya Chen stood in her lab. She looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien scientists were learning to be brave, learning to ask questions, learning to be wrong. She smiled. They had a long way to go. But they had started. And starting, she knew, was the hardest part. She turned back to her work. There was so much to discover. So many questions to ask. So many mistakes to make. She was human. And humans, she knew, had the courage to be wrong. That was their secret. That was their gift. That was their superpower. The courage to be wrong. The courage to ask questions. The courage to explore the unknown. The human courage. The only courage that mattered. And the galaxy would never be the same. Because now they knew. Science was not about being right. And humans, the so-called primitives, had mastered the art of asking questions. Not through intelligence. The courage to be wrong. The courage to try. The courage to try again. That was the human way. That was the human secret. That was the human gift. And the galaxy, the great and powerful galaxy, was just beginning to understand.